you're someone who doesn't love frozen green beans, this video is for you. They are one of my favorite things to freeze every year. They're one of our most important vegetables we keep on hand. We eat them all winter long. And I'm going to show you all the details of how to make sure your green beans come out of the freezer with great texture and great flavor. Here's how I do it. Size, age, and variety all matter when freezing green beans. This one on the right is perfect, nice large green bean. This one on the left has gotten away from me a little bit. This one is too big. It's going to be tough and kind of woody. You can almost see the beans outlined inside of it. Here's another one that's a little bit too big. So these aren't good candidates for the freezer. I'm not going to freeze those. As far as variety, some types freeze much better than others. So if you haven't had good luck with freezing beans, that might be why. These are Jade. They're my very favorite, tried and true for the freezer. Other good ones are Top Crop and Contender. You can freeze purple beans. They usually turn kind of a grayish green, which isn't super pleasant, but most of the time they freeze okay. Definitely stay away from yellow wax beans, though. Those don't freeze very well at all. And of course, fresh is always best. I like to harvest in the morning and get them processed the same day. At most, I only like to keep green beans in the fridge for a couple days if I intend to freeze them. Okay, moving on to how to prepare your beans. Give them a good wash, and then we need to remove this top stem part. Definitely don't spend your time removing the bottom pointy part. That's not necessary, but the top stems do need to go. And how I like to do this, the easiest, quickest way that I've found is to take a small handful of beans and line them up so they're all about the same, but don't fuss over it. Then you can see the tops sticking out and you can see the stems. You can go through quick and just pinch them off, kind of snap them off. Then at the bottom of the bundle, you can do the same. And in about 10 seconds, you've got a handful of ready to go beans. Now, I like to freeze my green beans whole. I like the way they look. It's less work, there's less surface area, and less risk of freezer burn. But if you like yours snapped into pieces, you will do that now. Do that before you blanch them. This is actually how I grew up eating beans. I remember my mom always sitting on the couch with a huge bowl of beans, just snapping away. But I like mine whole. You can do yours either way. And blanching times are the same for both. I always make sure to have all my beans prepped and ready before I start with the blanching process because once you get that pot going, it goes really, really quickly. This here is one of the secrets to really great frozen green beans. It's a steamer pot. We are going to steam blanch these instead of blanching them in boiling water. It seems to be a bit gentler and it really does produce the best quality bean. I'll link the steamer pot in the video description below. It's my absolute favorite. It has a really big water reservoir so you don't run your pot dry. Has the perfect size basket. It's really lightweight but sturdy and easy to use. And here's my setup. I've got my green beans prepared. I got my pot heating. I've made an ice bath, which is just water and ice, fairly equal parts. And then I have a pan with a clean kitchen towel, and that is going to be to dry the beans once they come out of the water. Okay, so once your pot is up to temperature and full of steam, just like this, you can put in the first load of green beans. I usually do just a couple handfuls, like big handfuls. You don't want to overload the pot because then they won't cook evenly, but you don't want to underload it either and take more time than you have to. So get them in there, zhuzh them down, put the lid on, and then start your timer immediately. Green beans are going to take 3 minutes total to steam blanch, but we're going to actually stir them around the halfway mark. It's been 1.5 minutes and I'm going to give these a stir. I want to show you what can happen here. What you'll notice is the beans have turned bright green except for a couple random spots kind of in the middle of the pile. Do you see how that bean still has some drab, dull green on it? It's not getting cooked. It's probably blocked by some other beans. So I like to just give them a stir and make sure that they all heat evenly. Another 1.5 minutes have gone by and the beans are done because that is 3 minutes. So I'm going to get these out of here and into the ice bath. We want to cook them, but then we want to stop the cooking. And while I'm doing this, I want to answer the question of why. Why are we doing this? It seems like almost an unnecessary extra step during a really busy harvest season, but I assure you this blanching step is absolutely necessary if you want the best quality green beans possible. And the science behind that is that all vegetables contain enzymes. Those enzymes will deteriorate the vegetables over time, and freezing slows that, but it doesn't stop it. What stops it is heat. So this act of briefly heating the vegetables and then cooling them will ensure that your beans keep the best color and flavor and texture and nutrients over time in the freezer. And jumping right back in, once I empty the pot, I fill it right back up again and start the process over. And I know that there are people out there who swear by freezing their green beans raw without this blanching process, but I can tell you that I have tried it, and they were the worst green beans that I've ever had. In fact, I couldn't even eat them. They were so awful. So if you want the best green beans possible, this is definitely the way to do it. I know that we worked really hard to grow these, and I want to enjoy them this winter, and I want them to be top-notch. And I get it. It is totally tempting to just throw your raw green beans into a bag and then into the freezer, but please don't do it. I beg of you, don't do it. I promise that this is so quick and easy. Once you get going, it goes so fast. I think your hand is the best tool for this next job. I just grab out a big handful. They've been in here maybe a minute, doesn't take long. Let them drip dry just a little bit and then move them over to the towel so that they can dry. Then spread them out as far as you can so that they dry as quickly as possible, which will take around 30 minutes or so. You want them to be as dry as they can be, but not stay out too long. And if you're working through a lot of beans, you'll want multiple pans and towels. If you're working through a lot of beans, consider a small tabletop fan to help speed up the drying. And don't forget to keep adding more ice to your bowl so that the water stays really cold. And now it's time to bag them up for the freezer. I'm using freezer bags because they are thicker and more protective than something like a storage bag. One thing to note here is that the beans, missed a top, that's okay. The beans are a little bit duller, like they're not shiny and wet, which is what you want. It's okay if they're a little bit moist, but they just shouldn't be glistening, you know? As far as how many to put in a bag, that's up to you. I like to put as many as we will eat for about one meal or so, and we are a 2-person household, so I fill these bags about half full. If you have a larger family, definitely fill that bag to the top. You can see here I'm taking a little bit of care in packing this bag and lining up the beans. That's one thing I actually like about whole beans as well, is that you can pack them in really nicely in these bags very snugly, and that means there'll be less airspace between them and the beans will just freeze that much better. Of course, air is the enemy of frozen foods, so I am going to try to get as much air out of this bag as I can. I'll close the seal, except for the very corner, and then use my hands to push out as much of the air as I can while simultaneously closing the last bit of the bag. Then I'm going to label it and stick it in the freezer. I think equally as important as all these little details about how to freeze beans is how you heat them. It makes a world of difference. So here's how I do it. I'll take a bag of beans out of the freezer kind of in the late morning, and they'll be about thawed by dinner time. I pour them into a pot with any liquid that's left in the bag, and I usually add a tablespoon or two more of water just to help them steam. I'll kick on the heat, get them simmering with the lid on, and they literally take like 3 or 4 minutes. That is it. Definitely don't overcook these. I think that might be where a lot of people get into trouble and have bad beans, is that they're turning them into mush. I'll then take the pot over to the sink and use the lid to help drain out any of that extra liquid in there because I don't want watery beans. Next is very important. We are going to add a little bit or a lot of bit of butter. And the heat from the pan and the heat from the beans is going to melt that in about 30 seconds. Last is a generous pinch of salt because buttery, salty green beans are the absolute best. And then I just toss them around and roll all the beans around in that butter. Aren't they just beautiful? I am telling you, when you are eating these on a cold winter's day, you will think they just came out of the garden. They are that good. They're definitely one of my top, if not the top vegetable that I love to grow and freeze every year. And I want to show you what these look like, what they should look like when you cook them properly. No, they're not like a crunchy raw green bean, but they've got body and they've got bite. They're not just total mush or anything like that. So I hope that helps, and I hope that you'll give green beans a try in the freezer, especially if you're someone who hasn't loved them in the past. If you love the idea of freezing your fresh produce and want even more ideas for how to freeze your fruits and vegetables in unique and creative ways, I wrote a book called Freeze Fresh that walks you through all of it, and I will link that in the video description below. As always, let me know if you have questions, and if you found this video helpful, I would love it if you could give it a thumbs up. And make sure to subscribe to my channel so that you are the first to know whenever a new video is posted.